If you're not getting educated about the current market conditions, whether you're in finance, mortgages, title, you're an attorney, or obviously a real estate professional, you're doing yourself and your client base a disservice. This is the Knowledge Brokers Podcast. I'm Tom Toole. We've got Byron Lazine, Lisa Chinatti, the biggest two-faced bitch in real estate, is the new term that got coined right before the show
No,
here.
she wanted the baddest.
Well, we changed it up. We got a lot to talk about this week. We've seen the 10-year come up a little bit after a favorable jobs report this morning. We saw mortgage rates come in. I was getting quoted low sixes yesterday, actually 6% on the dot for one buyer that locked in. And on top of that, we're questioning whether inventory's bottoming out, and we saw prices tick up a little bit. So to me, the biggest news is this jobs report. So the jobs report came out at 8:30 this morning.
Well, Tom, I want to get to all of that, but the reason Lisa was the baddest two-face in the industry is because we got to react to that Inman piece first, and then we'll get into everything that's gone on over the week. Because, she's just like scapegoated out of this thing. I'm the bad guy, and Lisa's the golden child. So there's a piece in Inman this week that was written about Lisa and I, and we've got to react to it.
Okay. So Rachel Haidt wrote this article on Inman. It dropped today at 2 a.m. So we're getting a lot of hot news here on Good Friday. And apparently there was a piece of content on The Real Word where Lisa filled in for Nicole White. And here's the quote from Rachel Haidt. I'm just going to read it and you guys can talk about it. What bothered me most out of all the responses was that a contributor, Byron Lazine, called me out by name on his weekly show, The Real Word. I enjoy his show. I've been following it for years, and for the most part, it's fun and informative. I was a little taken aback that he would use my article, which was written to call attention to a serious issue in our industry, as an opportunity to write it off as a racket, and that I was trying to be the most woke person in the room by writing it. His co-host, Lisa Chinatti, seemed to get what I was talking about when she said she quit a brokerage that wanted her to wear skirts. That's what I'm talking about, Byron. The girls that get it, get it. And apparently this had to do with an article she wrote about people can't tell you what to wear in real estate. So let's hear your reaction, guys. Happy Friday.
Yeah, this was an older show Lisa and I did the show, and so I don't know what that was, a month or two ago, maybe.
I think it was like in the fall.
No, I don't think it was that long ago. It was this year because Nicole was out with her.
You were in this office, I remember from the thumbnail. So
yeah,
after the pipes burst.
Anyways, her article, which was written, the original piece that she wrote, which was written February 13th, 2023. Just to go back a little bit, I'm a real estate agent. You can't tell me what to wear on the job. We need to have a deeper conversation around professional dress codes, diversity, and how the culture of work has changed for independent contractors. And so, I mean, on the second piece, she's, kind of saying it's a much deeper issue and kind of pointing towards, the whole woman thing. And so, and she does write that in the first article. Women have been told since the beginning of time our bodies are a problem and that it's safer for everyone else if we keep it covered when we are doing anything but bedroom activities. I don't know where she got that I thought skirts were, or how I really took this out on. I remember in The Real Word saying, I gave the example of the dude wearing the backwards hat going on the listing appointment. So I don't know how I'm all of a sudden the guy that hates women or something like that on here, because that certainly couldn't be further from the truth. And this is where, and I said that on the show, people write these articles trying to be the wokest person in the room, but by using words like, how the work culture has changed. Listen, when 52% of people making a decision this year are boomers, the culture of how you present yourself on a listing appointment certainly hasn't changed that much. And walking into somebody's home professional, I've never advocated skirts. I don't know where that came from, but I don't know if that's an assumption. And, where Lisa gets to be, the almighty Lisa Chinatti, nobody's going to say a bad thing about her. It has something to do with
factual.
It has something to do with the way I say things, like the tone in which I say it. People just naturally get a knee-jerk reaction sometimes to the tone that I use. And so I stand by everything I said. I believe that people are getting a little bit too lackadaisical with the way that they are going to approach their dress code because it's their business. And if you don't like it, don't work with me attitude. When you got your real estate license to serve the community, you should take that into consideration. All communities are different, but Ryan, I mean, you just look at a guy like Ryan Serhant. He doesn't need to, beg anybody for listings at this point, and he still suits up. I don't think you need to suit up. I want to be very clear on that. I'm not advocating for suits. I don't wear a suit. I wouldn't wear a suit at this point in my career. When I was 27 years old and I needed to age up and get on the level of a boomer and be the most professional version of myself, and I had no credibility and I had no book, I did suit up because I wanted to take any chance of losing that opportunity out of the equation. And I just think as new people come into the industry, giving this advice of like, if the client doesn't like it, too bad for them, is going to be limiting their opportunities to help serve the community that they got a real estate license for. And I will reach out to Rachel on this because I think there's probably an opportunity for us to do a piece of content, maybe a little BAM debate in the future. But I did have to, because it came out this week, I did have to react. And Lisa, Lisa gets it. She's a real girl. So let's get it from woman Lisa. What do you got for me, Lisa?
Well, I think that there is a difference. Like, what I will say is that I respect both of you immensely, right? But it is at upper levels, it is a male dominated industry, right? Like,
yes.
And I think that there is
I agree with
a
that.
difference between how men perceive things and how women perceive things. And I do think that at a certain level, we fight a different kind of perception, right? And messaging is sometimes not necessarily what's said, but there's undertones to things when directed towards women. So I get it. I get both sides of this, right? And kind of talking about the suit thing, the whole topic can be so heated. I've got young kids that come in thinking that they need to wear a suit and they just look ridiculous, right? Or the kid who comes in so wrinkled from top to bottom, or the socks that don't match. And I don't think it's necessarily just, is it a suit or is it jeans or is it yoga pants? And fun fact, I put a sweater on the top, but I'm wearing my gym pants on the bottom, just for you, Byron, because I knew if I had on my sweats again today, I might hear some grief over it. Just kidding. But
Lisa has yoga pants with a skirt on top, so she can both
and high heels,
tease both sides.
Yeah.
I don't think I own a pair of high heels. Yeah, exactly. That would be another broken arm. But I do think, I think it is different when you're a woman in the industry. And I think that until you will love this expression, I think until you've walked in the shoes of a woman in the industry, I think it's tough to really kind of understand it and understand the balancing act to it. So
no, and I certainly never will. I'm a male. I don't plan on walking in the shoes of a woman at all.
Maybe I'm going to send you some. I'll send you some. I'm
gonna remain a male. So I agree. I'll never have experienced that, and I just don't know if I got taken out of context a little bit there, in the sense that my conversation was not directed towards women. I think I used the example. I know I used the example of the dude wearing the hat backwards. So when I talk about dress, maybe in the future, I will only direct it towards the men, because I guess that's all I can speak on, even though I do know a lot of women. I'm raising 2 daughters. I'm married to a woman, to be
very
clear.
nice girls, by the way. Very well behaved children, way better than mine.
Well,
but I'm not a woman, so.
Well, but it's also, I think you are 100% correct. I think, one of the things about actually all three of us, and I know we've had this discussion offline, right, is I think that we're all very direct in our normal communication styles. And I think where Tom and I have kind of, and I've said this to you, Tom and I have found the balance with tempering it a little bit more in public. And you own you 100%. I will own the two-faced aspect of it, because the directness doesn't come through in the same way. I don't put quite the same,
well,
I don't know what the word is, but I don't put the same emphasis in the public persona.
To be clear, the two-faced mean, Lisa's a very kind, empathetic person. The two-faced part meant that Lisa will put on a better PR face than I ever could.
That's
And
what
I do
I
just
meant.
say, that's what you're saying. And that's the summary there. Like, I tend to not have a filter when I say things. And so, not that either one is, I'm probably definitely, Lisa and Tom coach me up on this all the time. Like, hey, guy, maybe you should say things with a little bit more PR. More people, you'll appeal to more people. And so, I don't know if I'll ever get there, but I'm going to reach
I
out to
don't know if you
Rachel.
have to.
I like the piece that she wrote, by the way. So I'm not, I love the piece. It's much better than the piece that, listen, Rachel writes some controversial pieces. I talk about them all the time. I talked about one of her other ones, spoke about it on the Real Word this week, this bare minimum Monday piece. So she's going to come after me again because I didn't realize it was the same person actually. Bare minimum Mondays, where you do the bare minimum on a Monday as an employee after you had Saturday and Sunday off. Don't get me started back on that whole thing, but we got a lot to cover this week. So we wanted to address that, but Tom, take us away on what happened this week.
All right, you guys done? Back to Knowledge Brokers. So, should I give the intro
Lisa will
again?
take another shot at me, but
all right,
I'm done
so,
for now.
All right, so let's talk about this jobs report. I think this is something that a lot of people are waiting to see. And the jobs report came out 8:30 in the morning on Friday. And here are some of the highlights. The unemployment rate ticked lower to 3.5% amid an increase in labor force participation. And a lot of people thought the expectations were it would hold at 3.6%. Average hourly earnings rose 0.3%, pushing the 12-month increase to 4.2%, the lowest level since June 2021. So this was kind of, I would say it was good news in the eyes of the Fed. And we saw the 10-year move a little higher based on after this jobs report, even though yesterday we were seeing I was getting rates quoted at 6% for people locking in. So that's one of the lowest rates we've seen in quite a while. So what do you guys think about this job report? Let's start there, and then we can kind of get into inventory pricing, all those other things that we want to unpack this week as well.
Well, two-faced ladies first. Go ahead, Lisa.
It seems like there's some bitterness.
No,
Whatever.
I just want to give you the stage first.
Doesn't seem like.
I appreciate that. Exactly.
Sure.
Thank you. I think it was super positive. I think when you get super granular on it, that's where you start to see some of the kind of positive impact or kind of what we were hoping for, right? Like wage growth slowed. And then when you look at where the jobs were actually created, there were fewer than anticipated in the private sector, which is, I think, one of the bigger things to watch, just leading to what's actually happening in our local marketplaces, outside of government, outside of that kind of stuff, gives a bigger indication of how is sentiment feeling within business in general. So I think it'll be interesting. I'm curious what you guys think will happen with rates based on this.
Well, we're seeing that, on a week that the 10-year went down all week, and to Tom's point, you had people locking in at 6% on the 30-year fixed. And I even, heard some that were slightly under 6, really good credit and depending on personal situation for sure. But then all of a sudden the jobs report comes out Friday morning at 8:30 a.m. and you did see the 10-year pop back up. So, it seems like it's trending up because there's uncertainty on what, Powell, how he's going to take this information. We weren't over expectations, which we don't want. He keeps saying that there's going to be more pain coming in the job market, and that, there's certainly a belief out there that that's going to make his job easier if more people lose jobs. He attacked housing, the tech industry, went into a recession. Those are two industries, housing and tech, that went into a recession last year. And it's seemingly like jobs are going to be the next thing. That hasn't happened yet. We have seen job openings go from 11 million down to under 10 million for the first time since, I believe, 2021, that we dropped under 10 million job openings. So it is slowing, but it was still pretty strong. And unemployment came down from 3.6. It was at a low of 3.4 earlier in the year, now at 3.5. I think, rates so far are telling us that there might be a little bit of a bounce back up, nothing significant, but a little bit of a tick up. And that's what we're seeing initially.
Well, I mean, they wanted to create like they wanted people to stop working. Like that was what the Fed kept talking about, which was that they wanted to see this number come down. And what ZipRecruiter chief economist Julia Polak said is that everything's moving in the right direction, and she's never seen a report align with expectations as much as today's over the last 2 years. So I think the real question is it going to continue? And, are we going to see this continue to go this way? And with, now that there's more and more data around the recession is likely happening, it could lead, hopefully, to the Fed to stop raising rates. I mean, that's really that's the end goal of this report, in my view, is that let's hope they just stop raising rates. Let's have them stop messing with this and let all their measures play out a little bit instead of the constant micromanagement. And if you look at the 1 month net change of jobs, this is where it's pretty interesting. Retail and trade, they were down. Construction, manufacturing, financial activities, they all saw decreases. And the places that saw increases were leisure and hospitality, healthcare and social assistance, government, go figure, professional and business services. So you're seeing some of these places that, like retail trade, that tells me people are spending less money. They're being a little more conscious about what they're buying. And construction, obviously, we've talked about construction and at length on this. So we're seeing that people are starting to seeing that job. I mean, that was the biggest decrease out of all the 1 month net changes in jobs, that people are going to be a little more cognizant of their spending, which was one of the reasons why we got into this mess in the first place, because there was so much disposable income during the pandemic. People were spending all kinds of money.
They're in a tough spot, the Fed, because it's hard to tell Americans that we have too many people working. It sounds counterintuitive to having
Ridiculous.
a robust economy. And, I don't want to put Americans out of job, but it does make the, Federal Reserve's, fight against inflation, getting it down to 2% that much easier if you have less people working. Now, we could get to a point here, and I think we're a month, maybe a month and a half away of a lot of this, rent data coming out of inflation. And there's some beliefs out there that when you pull, rent and shelter out, this lagging data that's going to catch up by the end of May, when you pull it out, that inflation could drop significantly. And so if we can keep a strong job market up until the point where inflation drops, closer to that 3%, near their target's 2%, but closer to that target, you might be able to continue and move along here with a strong job market without seeing mass layoffs. We've seen some layoffs, but with avoiding a massive amount of layoffs. That would be the hope.
That's kind of the dream scenario if it plays out that way, because the Fed has just not wavered off this 2% inflation target. And I mean, it's every meeting, every comment, they keep talking about it, which we understand it's a prime goal of theirs. So if it played out that way, I mean, Byron, you should be taking Jerome Powell's job if you can make that happen.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be that easy for him. That's the dream scenario. There are some real bulls on, this disinflation and talking about like, hey, when the rent data comes out of it, when that drops down, you're going to see inflation get really close to, that 2% level, under 3 anyways. They think we're like heading in that direction. Then there's people that are obviously, have a contrarian belief to that, but rents have rents dropped in Boston, Lisa?
No, it's
No.
horrid. No,
So they have in the South.
Okay. Yeah, no, we're not seeing it yet. We're still at crazy high. Our rental inventory, downtown Boston's a different beast than as you kind of go in the suburbs, but we're seeing a rental shortage almost just as short as our purchase shortage.
Okay, in the city, but what about if you go to some of those, half hour outside of Boston, because you work all of those markets as well. If you go into the deeper suburbs, have you seen resistance on the top end rent like that people can get? Is there resistance there?
No, and that's part of my point. We have slightly more vacancy in the city than we do in the suburbs.
Okay.
In the suburbs, we're still, and that's where the market is hottest, right? Is in the suburbs still over
Yeah.
actual downtown Boston. But legit, if I opened up like some of the top suburbs that people want to rent in right now, I've got less than a dozen reasonable options for rent in MLS. Now, there's a whole bunch that's available where the landlords rent directly through places like Craigslist or apartments.com or whatever, right? But what we would typically see for rental inventory is, especially right now, we're very driven by our school years, both the college school year
Yeah.
and the traditional school year. So we would expect to see those rental listings start to pop up as people prepare to move out at the end of June. So it's something that we're going to watch very closely over the next 6 to 8 weeks to see what does actually pop up, and that'll give us a good indication for where the rental market's going.
Well, it's funny. The government has this survey for tracking rents where they call people at their home, like, on the telephone and ask them what their rent is, as opposed to like getting data from CoStar or apartments.com or from Zillow to track rents. And that's what's going into this inflation number, which is just crazy to me. Um, that's what we'd be using here at this point in the game. I'd love to know. I'm curious if you're tracking rents in your market and you're listening right now, especially if you're on YouTube, just drop it into the comments. Is the rental is it hotter than it was in 2022 for price point on rentals? Love to know from you in the comments. What is it like in the Philly area, Tom? As we close out quarter one and go into quarter two of 2023, it's been a wild ride. And if you want to stay ahead of the curve, make sure that your business lasts throughout 2023. As you see others regressing, make sure that you have the staff willing to support your dreams and your goals. It's why I use VirtueDesk to staff up our virtual assistants. Whether you're looking for an administrative, marketing, prospecting, inside sales, or customer service assistant, or you just need that executive assistant, contact VirtueDesk today. Use the BAM code down below to get $250 off of your startup fee with VirtueDesk. Use the BAM code down below. Hire VirtueDesk to staff up your virtual assistant experience today.
So I'd love to tell you I know all the data. So what I did is I went on rent.com and they give you some great data here, right? So in Philadelphia, for a 2-bedroom, rental rates are up 7% year over year. In Media, which is like one of the towns outside of Philadelphia, one of the places we sell a lot of real estate, the average 2-bedroom rental rate is up 20% year over year. And that's one of those like hot boroughs where you can get like the train into town and those sort of downtown areas. Bala Kinwood, which is not far from where I live. I mean, the 1-bedroom rentals actually have jumped up, but the 2-bedroom rentals have gone down. So I mean, it's kind of there's something I found pretty interesting is that we've seen a mass exodus from the city, and they're renting in these higher end school districts right outside the city to get their kids enrolled, and that's been one of the challenges that we've seen in general. So I mean, it looks like it's kind of all over the map, but I mean, people finding rentals they're having the same hard time that they are finding a house right now. I mean, that's definitely clear. Housing does have a shortage, and people they're kind of settled in right now. And you figure most landlords, I mean, and this is more anecdotal than data based. They're not savvy enough to build in automatic rent increases every year into their leases. Most landlords, they kind of do the lease themselves. Maybe they hire a residential agent who doesn't specialize in this stuff, and they don't protect themselves that way. So how many times have you guys had a client where they're like, oh, the home's under rented, but we're going to sell it, because they just never increase the rents? So why would these people move when, if they want to move, it's going to cost them exponentially more? They've been in the property 5, 6, 7 years. So they're almost treating it like this is my housing payment and it's locked in, and I'm not going to make waves to my landlord, because so many landlords are afraid to have that 1 month of vacancy, which can cost you a lot of money.
Do you think the agent out there should be, you just mentioned there, an agent that's a residential agent that maybe not as knowledgeable in the rental space? Do you think there should be two different positions or the same? Or do you think you should be well-rounded and know the rental game if you're on the resale side of the market?
No, it should be totally different. Like, we are a sales team. I mean, this is an interesting one. So, anecdotal story. I was the subject of a 4-year lawsuit because someone who was moving to Lithuania to becoming a CTO wanted to rent out a single family home. And I said, this is a horrible idea. Don't rent out your primary residence. It's like 3,000 square feet. And the guy he rented it to had a criminal record, and it was disclosed. He had the emails about it. It's on his background check. And he proceeded to sue everyone involved, went through 5 different attorneys. And then it got in front of a judge here. And this is me, so I'm happy to share all this stuff. And the judge said, yeah, hey, Mr. Real Estate Agent, you're right, but I don't have time for this. So go settle the case outside of court. And we are now like a national case study law where it's questionable to even require background checks. And all I can think of is the amount of time I had to deal with that. I probably could have sold 15, 20 more houses. So that's what happens when you get involved in something that's not your field of expertise.
So how should an agent then, Lisa, who has a client was like, I'm probably going to want to buy, but I want to look at rentals. I want to look at both. If you're a for sale shop only, how does that agent navigate that experience of rentals and buying? How do you go through that experience at the same time if they want both ends?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult, right? I wanted to go back to talking about capped rents and stuff. I don't know what it's like in your market, but there is a big debate going on in Boston right now where they're trying to bring rent control back, which will cap the year over year increases that landlords can charge. And it has
Mm-hmm.
created some really heated arguments on both sides of the table, with the impact that that could have to the city, right? And to the housing market in general. Curious whether that's something you guys are seeing in your markets, or like Philly in particular. Is that something that exists there?
Not right now. I mean, we've there's a big mayoral election coming up, and
Mhm.
Philadelphia's got too many people getting killed down here to worry about this stuff right now. To be very honest with you, so
The DeSantis just signed a bill in Florida on. I'll actually have it up. So
of course you do.
it was he's the only governor that did an affordable housing bill here recently. Florida's $711 million affordable housing bill becomes law. And then it does talk about the rent cap here. It's become one of the least affordable markets, obviously, with everybody going in there. And let me find
Well, so
so you'd be allowed. Go ahead, Lisa.
I was going to say the stats that just got passed. The councilors voted to pass it 11-2, and it would allow year over year rent hikes to change in the consumer price index plus 6% or 10% at most, whichever of the two figures is lower. And so this would impact 56% of all of our rental units in Boston. And what that equates to is 185,000 units would be impacted by rent control. It's pretty big just in the city of Boston.
Yeah, that's pretty big. And so DeSantis did the opposite. DeSantis signed Bill 102, known as the Live Local Act, on Wednesday, days after the legislation passed in Florida House of Representatives. In addition to setting aside funds for affordable housing, the law will supersede local government's zoning, density, and height requirements for affordable housing in areas zoned for commercial or mixed-use development. It also strips local municipalities' ability to enact rent control, which was previously only possible during a housing emergency. So these local municipalities will not be able to enact rent control. So taking the opposite approach of Boston, I guess we'll get to see how both play out. And, who now, but at the same time he's doing that, he's providing $700 million of funding for affordable housing, which, creates incentives for these developers, but they've got to go up to 40% of affordable housing for a period of at least 30 years to get access to this money. So he's trying to provide more affordable housing at the same time and I did find that Redfin, so Boston rents are up, Philly, they're up. The US median asking price for rent, according to Redfin's data, is up just 1.7% from a year ago. So there's other parts of the country where it's down. And I know specifically in Florida, it's one of those areas. I could have gotten more for my personal residence on an annual rent last year than I could this year. It's not that much more, it's not that big of a drop, but there is a drop. The median US asking rent rose 1.7% year over year to $1,937 in February. The smallest increase in nearly 2 years, the lowest level in nearly a year. They were up 10 times that much a year earlier. They're up 16.5% a year earlier. So rent in appreciation is slowing down significantly right now. And in the middle of last year, the median U.S. asking rent was actually over $2,000. It was $2,053, and now we're at 19. So over the last 6 months, it's come down. Year over year, it's up 1.7, and this is nationally. So February was the 9th straight month in which rent growth slowed on a year over year basis. It actually fell 0.3% from a month earlier, and so you're seeing pockets, I guess, certainly in the South and in the West, where rent growth is either slowing or it's down altogether, which
I guess
as
it
this
kind of
data
makes
catches
sense.
up into inflation to like bring it all back, that's 33% of the CPI is rent. So if rents are coming down, this number is going to drop real significantly in a hurry too. Once you pull that data out, it's lagging, but it's coming.
Yeah.
I don't know if inflation is, do you feel like inflation is that bad for most people in your community? I mean, Lisa's in a bougie community. Tom's more of in a meat and potato market. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest way people feel inflation is at the gas station. I mean, that's number one. I mean, people see that number, they know what they're paying per gallon. Gas prices have settled in a little bit. I mean, I hear people complain a lot that, like, I mean, literally, I'm at the grocery store the other day checking out, and they're like, I don't know how you even afford a gallon of milk anymore. And these are comments I hear from people all the time. So,
Right.
And my wife says that about the grocery store for sure.
Yeah, and so I think people. I mean, I remember last year 4th of July, it was like the price of like ground beef went up like 12% or something. So I think people are feeling it a little more than you might realize. But I don't know if they're feeling it as much as they were 6 months ago. I mean, it does feel like it's slowing down a little bit.
That's the point. Yeah.
And now that, especially like you're past the holiday season, I think that has a lot to do with it too, because people spend so much in the month of November and December that we're into the part of the year now where it's, I mean, there's the holidays coming up, or like weekends off and that sort of stuff. It's nothing that dramatic. So yeah, I hope inflation goes down. I mean, I don't think anyone wants to see inflation like we've seen it over the past couple of years, because it obviously it affects a lot of people. And we talk about the communities we all serve, it's median price points. I mean, it's not, all kidding aside about meat and potatoes or a bougie market. I mean, it's the average sale price for most people is in that like $400,000 range, like low to mid fours, right? And those people, the rule of thumb for getting a mortgage is you buy a home that's going to be 4x your current income. So it's about someone making $100,000 a year. You got a family and you're making $100,000 a year. Inflation's going to sting you. I mean, you've got a lot of costs involved with kids and everything else going on. So I do feel like inflation's slowing. It's just more of a guess and just seeing it in the day to day, because the data is so lagged, and we all believe in lead indicators. It just doesn't exist for inflation.
And all right, and we've also got inventory and price updates here for.
We're talking about the holiday weekend,
that?
right? So today's Good Friday. Easter weekend's coming up. We're coming off spring break, and Lisa has an interesting theory. I like this theory. So Logan Motoshami, he had in his weekly housing market tracker, he says it doesn't look like inventory's bottomed quite yet. We had that little blip where it went up for slightly earlier in March. Now it's come down a little bit. And if you look at the seasonal inventory bottom, last year we saw it right around March 4th. We don't have a weekly bottom yet in 2023. And in 2021, inventory bottomed on April 9th. And Lisa's theory is this has to do with when spring break and Easter hits. I'm clear April's going to be a very telling month. I don't know that we're going to see inventory go much lower here. I'm in line with Logan. I feel like we've got to hit a bottom here, whether it's last week or this week. Again, it's lag data. We don't get it in real time. I was looking at our MLS, Lisa. I know you did the same. We saw less new homes come to the market this week over the past 7 days than the previous week. And then the week before that, we saw almost double what was coming on. So my hope here is for all the home buyers and sellers out there, because sellers got to buy, especially those boomers, that we're going to see inventory bottom and a big influx of new homes coming to the market. What's your take on this? What are you guys seeing?
Yeah, I when we kind of looked at the data and went back and looked at Easter spring break for most of our schools, I think that there's a clear correlation, at least in my market, right? And I think in your guys's too. It's interesting. I question whether it's the perception of that that's the start of spring, and when people just have been historically programmed to think that that's the start of spring. Also, to the meat and potatoes aspect of things, right? We're not none of us are running vacation market sales teams, right? So you think about that meat and potatoes aspect, there's a lot that's tied to the school year. And when you back out the days on market with the time to get to the closing table and when you're actually moving out, people don't want to move out of their homes with 2 or 3 weeks left to the school year, right?
Nope.
And they don't want to move into new homes with 2 to 3 weeks left to the school year. So I think that there's some definite timing issues related to that very big factor.
If you overlay the data, if you're working out of the MLS and you overlay the data of the last 20 years, you will see a consistent trend, whether you're in that vacation market or, in a market that's more driven by, families and schools, of when the inventory comes on every single year in your market, when the majority of the sales happen in your market. And the national trend obviously is that this is the time of year between now and, middle of May that you're going to see, the biggest burst of under contracts. It's going to be these next 45 to 60 days for sure nationally. But you may be, to Lisa's point, in a market where it's completely different just because it's a vacation market and you're going to want more inventory in the winter leading into, like a Florida market. You're going to want more inventory coming in December, January 1st, when everybody's coming down, which is January, February, and March. You're going to want that inventory up front. And so you're going to have a trend that's localized to you. What's interesting though, Tom, we did find that number here. So last year's the seasonal inventory bottom was actually on March 4th nationally. So it was much earlier last year.
Yep.
Okay, you did say, okay, it was April 9th on 2021. And so we're behind certainly last year's bottom. We thought we might have saw the bottom a couple weeks ago, and then it went back the other direction. April 9th feels to me like right now, right? I mean, that would be next week saying that we hit the bottom this week before the holiday weekend.
Yeah, and that could be what a lot of people are anticipating. And the other factor too is, I mean, you look historically, schools go so late anymore. I mean, schools don't get out till like June 18th. I mean, I don't know about. I feel like I'm dating myself here, although I know we're all the same age. I was out of school like the end of May, so it does affect moving schedules for a lot of people because, I mean, just doing anything with children is a pain, right?
Florida, it's the end of May still.
Okay, well, there you go. But it's not up here, and so I can only speak to the market we sell in. So there's these other factors here, and the other thing to think about is that, I mean, there's been so much volatility in the market. I still there's still fear out there, and you can't dismiss that some people just don't know what to do, or you have people locked in with these 2 and 3 and 4 rates. Now they're seeing some relief. I mean, going from a 4 to a 6, if it's going to get you a bigger home, I think that's a little more of an easier sell than a 4 to a 7, right? So hopefully with some of this data coming out and interest rates coming down back to earth here since October, I mean, we were still over 7%. That wasn't even a month ago. I mean, that we were at 7 1/8 a few weeks ago with rates. So they've come down substantially. So that should prompt people to maybe make a different decision here. And again, my hope is that we're going to see folks come to the market. We're going to see inventory bottom out because there's still a lot of intent in the marketplace. And there's people that are trading up and buying homes because they need to move and their motivation is that strong. That's going to happen no matter what market you see. So, April is, I mean, this is game time in the Northeast. April, May, June. This is when you make your hay. So you got to have a really clear second quarter plan if you're a real estate agent. This is when you're going to sell the majority of your real estate. And you got to be ready to go. I mean, like, we got a holiday weekend coming up. I would just clear my calendar and be ready to work up until July 4th. If I was anyone if I was a real estate agent right now, which I am, this is go time.
Yeah. The inventory bottom is coming, whether it's this week or next week. Like, let's all be clear. It'll definitely happen here. It happens every year. There's going to be an inventory bottom and we'll start going the other direction. How high that inventory actually gets this year, I don't have much faith in that just based off of how many people are locked into 3% or lower. But have we hit the bottom? on prices. So Black Knight just came out this week, and home prices rose for the first time in 8 months. So February registered a 0.16% seasonally adjusted month-over-month national increase in prices, and it's the first we've seen in 8 months since the Fed put housing into a recession. Is this the bottom? We had a long run for many years in this country of month over month over month home price appreciation. Are we about to get on another long run, or is it going to be more like those years between '07 and 2012 where you'd have some drops for some months in price, then you'd have some gains, then you saw some drops again. You saw it kind of go back and forth for a number of years. Are we in that scenario, or are we back on, we've seen the bottom and we're back on a long run?
I'm guessing we're on a long run. I think the inventory is going to drive that. And I don't see inventory, because of everything that we're talking about with the low interest rates and the volatility in there. I don't see inventory changing. And wait, I take that back. I think, go back to last week when we discussed the divide between the East and the West. And I think you have to look at each market differently. I think in the Northeast, I think we're in for a long run because of the inventory issue. I think
Yep.
that may not be the case in some parts of the West where they've already seen decreasing prices. I think they could be in for the bumpiness of an up and down, up and down. But I think in the Northeast, I think we're in for the up. And you know
Yeah,
what?
I
One of the other, oh, go.
No.
Oh, okay, fine. So the other thing I was going to say is tying back into affordable housing. I think one of the things that keep smirking, I love it, that we have to watch as an industry, right, is that 10 years from now, I really think we're going to be in an affordable housing pinch. Because I think what we're going to see is all those folks in those starter homes with those 2 and 3% interest rates, they're going to add additions. They're going to finish basements and attics. They're going to over improve. And what had started as entry-level affordable housing for our first-time buyers is going to disappear. And I think we've got to be very, very cognizant of that as an industry, or we're going to have a big problem as a society.
Yeah, the addition game for general contractors is going to be very lucrative.
So I look at this very similarly to the 2008 depression, where there was the Northeast was held stronger than some of these other markets. I mean, specifically California, Texas, Nevada, Florida, and that's what we're seeing. And Redfin hit on this last week. Tech hubs and COVID hotspots, they're seeing prices come down a bit more because they don't have the industry or the jobs markets to sustain people living there year round. I mean, you're moving to Aspen, Colorado, unless you're a ski instructor or something like that. I mean, it's hard to have a viable business where you're going to typically raise a family. And
Correct.
that's the people that are going to pinch right now more than anyone else. I do agree about the addition game. I mean, if you want to, it's contractors are one of the worst most poorly run businesses in the country. They don't call you back. They don't do stuff on time. I was down in Bonita Springs, saw Byron over the weekend, and they're dealing with massive contractor issues because of the hurricane that hit. And these people just don't show up. They don't do any. If you were just a reliable contractor that returns calls and shows up when you say you will, you could be in for a major boom in your business over the next 10 to 20 years. Yeah. Well, if you can find the work, you got to run it. I mean, it's no different than running a real estate team. If you find people that are ready to work, you can do really great. It's the ones that don't want to work and are waiting for the business to fall in their lap. It's going to be a problem. So, and that's always been an issue. I mean, how many times do you get asked by clients, hey, do you have a reliable contractor? Do you have someone that knows how to show up? And then you got to pay these people well too. And that's the other issue with contractors. So to find the workers and the subs and everyone else they need to do to follow through on things. So, I think we're on a long run here as well. I mean, it's going to be more of a normal run, like 2% a year, 3% a year appreciation, which is very normal.
So in 2006, we saw, and Haley, you can put this table up. It's from the year 2000 to 2022. It's from Fortune. 2006, we had 4 months with declining home prices. In 2007, we saw 8. In 2008, every single month was in the red. 2009, only 3 months actually went up, but there were these pockets, June, July in 2009, where you had a monthly price gain nationally, and then November. 2010, you saw 3 months that didn't go down. One was at 0%, and then March and April actually went up. 2011, when we had that second drop, do you guys remember we had the second basically bottoming out? All of 2011 was down, and then into 2012. And then from March of 2012 all the way until June of 2022. So for 10 years in this country, we saw national home prices increase every single month. There wasn't one month where nationally we didn't see an increase. And then to finish out the year last year, we had those 6 months of declines. To start this year, we had another 2. And then, for the first time, really, we had 7 straight, because this is talking about February. So for the first time in 8 months, we saw a price increase. I think through the seasonal market of spring, we're going to see these month over month numbers continue to come in as, not for national numbers, home prices increase. It may be different in your market. And I would just say, I agree with, Lisa's point overall, that we're in for a long run. When you look back in 5 years, you're going to have the majority of months are going to be up. I think Q4 of this year at the very end, and maybe the beginning of Q1 next year, you might see a couple months where you see this decline. I think 2004 is going to be off the, and when you look at 2024, 2024, 2025, 2026, because of what both Lisa and Tom just said with the inventory issues, you're going to see extended periods of home price growth. But we may be in for a couple months where they drop down. There's not a, like on this table, there's not a 2007 to 2011 cliff coming by any stretch of the imagination.
So we think we're going to be a long run in the Northeast here. But, we're hoping inventory bottoms out. We've got, the 10-year making some moves after this jobs report. As we kind of wrap up here, are we going to see a strong spring market, or is it going to be more this like wonky week by week volatility that I feel like we've been dealing with this since like September. And is there going to be any sort of momentum or flow to the next 90 days when it comes to the housing market?
Can I say I think it's going to be both? I think that there's going to be consistent volatility, right? And I think that some of it will ease, but I think until the rates get some consistency, and I don't think any of us can predict that, I think that we're going to be at the whim of some of that. We need consistency and stability within rates to create consistency and stability within the market as a whole. You grimaced. You disagree?
Who was grimacing?
Tommy Toole.
Yeah, I thought so. Go ahead.
This is my face.
That's just
so.
He only has one face. Unfortunately, that's the one he has.
Yeah, that's it.
If he was
only
a woman, they'd telling me to like RBF. Like if I walked around with his face, they'd be like, dude, the RBF is on point, or like off the hook or whatever. But he's a dude. Here we go. Back to the like gender bias. Instead, we just say, oh,
well,
right. That's not how we're ending the show. So I like what you're talking about here, Lisa. This is the Knowledge Brokers podcast, not the walkthrough. So
if you were a woman, would you want to walk around with Tom Toole's face?
Yes, I would hope not. I mean, you can ask my wife what it's like walking around with my face, because I'm with her all the time. So, I do agree with you, Lisa, that I think it's going to be kind of a week by week thing. So where I was going with this is for the knowledge broker out there that wants to have a strong spring market, because I am clear this market, I see career opportunities for real estate agents. I see a ton of opportunity to go do deals, help people, because the more volatile the market is, the more valuable a knowledge broker is in your corner, right? And like having someone that can help you navigate all this. So what should the agents that want to have a uber successful 2023 Q2, what should they be doing right now? And how can they continue to get the word out that there's still opportunities in the marketplace? Because we all know there are, but a lot of people aren't feeling that way. The market's full of fear right now, just like we led the show off with before our gender tangent. Thanks to Byron.
Here's what you should do. If you're in a traditional office, you should walk into your office and do the opposite of what every individual or the majority of those agents are doing. The majority of them, it's very quiet. When you walk into these real estate offices, you can hear a pin drop. And so you should be the loudest person in your office. You should be doing the opposite of what they're doing, which is sitting behind the screen, hoping and wishing and chatting through Messenger. And you should be on the phone, just literally reaching out to people and talking about the volatility in the market. Here's the volatility in the real estate market. And most agents right now are not calling their clients. Notice I said their clients. If it's a past client, reference them as a current client. I treat you as someone who is going to be a client for now and forever. And I'm doing the opposite. Literally just say that. Hey, I'm doing the opposite of what everybody else is doing in a volatile market. And I'm reaching out to you, and you just start the conversation. You told them the market's volatile. You told them nobody's calling their clients. I'm calling you and want to be a resource here for you. And you see where they take the conversation. Well, I appreciate the call, Tom, but we bought the house 2 years ago. We love our interest rate. We love you. Great. Well, what are some of your neighbors saying? What's your, hey, listen, we're looking at, what's going on in the economy. How are you feeling about our local economy right now? Well, what are you hearing? Because all this information helps me be a better professional. And you unlock conversation after conversation after conversation. You'll put some data together on who's selling and who's buying and who you can serve in your community. So do the opposite of what everybody else is leaning into, which is, feeling safe and not getting out there and talking to people because they're uncertain of what to say. You don't even have to be certain. Just have the conversation at the very least.
Agreed.
Well,
Look at that, Lisa.
You're right on about like the people.
First thing should agree with me on there. I don't know. Was that a little too aggressive? Somebody write a hit piece on Lisa that she agreed with my aggressive tone on calls.
You got to be aggressive in the business right now. No one likes an aggressive agent until they have one. I learned that very early. I'll say that to people. They're like, "Oh, Byron or Lisa, you're so aggressive with your follow-up." Hey, you know what? You're right, because you need an aggressive agent in this market. Nobody likes that until they have one that's going to go get you what you want. And you want to find a great new home, right? You want to get your home sold for the max price, right? So I love that advice, because so many agents are so timid right now that being the loudest person at the office, we've got a guy here. We've actually gotten complaints from other team members that he's too loud, and he's selling a shit ton of houses. So I'm like, yeah, I love it when you're, it's like, it's funny how that plays out, because people are afraid to be the ones that are going out and charging the storm. So couldn't agree with you more. Love that. Great way to end the show here.
Love it. All right. I love Tom. I love you. Lisa, I love one of your faces. The
right
side,
or the left?
The side face. I don't know. The right. I like the right. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for all the help this week. It's been a rough week for me. It's been a rough week for a lot of people in the market. And so get some knowledge brokers on your side. That's how you're going to stay ahead.
Always.